This is House of Illusion by Andrew Lennon. Kevin paced back and forth across the laminated kitchen floor. His shoes clicked on the imitation wood with each step. Steve, Colette's father, gritted his teeth, trying to ignore the annoying pacing from his daughter's boyfriend. He pushed the volume button on the TV remote, increasing the sound in his attempt to ignore the impatient youth. It didn't work. He couldn't block this kid out. "She'll be down in a sec," he said, trying to stop the pacing. "Yeah, I know," Kevin said, while biting on the corner of his thumbnail. "There's no rush." "You okay, son?" "I'm fine, just a little bit nervous, it's our first real..." He blushed. "It's our first real date." Steve was fully aware of this. At 16, Colette and Kevin had been friends for their entire lives. Kevin lived 2 doors down. Steve always had a feeling that something would happen between the two of them, was actually surprised it had taken this long. Of course, Colette is his baby girl, but Kevin always seemed like a good kid. If he could have handpicked a boyfriend for his daughter, then he'd probably choose Kevin. "Yeah, but you've been out together loads of times," Steve said, trying to ease the boy's nerves. "This is no different, really, is it?" "It is different, though," Kevin continued to pace. "I've thought about this for years. I just don't want to mess it up." "Don't worry. I don't think you could mess it up. Unless you hurt her, of course. Then I'll have to hurt you." Steve glared at Kevin, then followed with a smile. He was just playing with him. He knew that he didn't need to threaten this kid. "More like she'd hurt me," Kevin joked. "Have you seen her punch?" "Yeah," Steve smiled. "I taught her. So, what have you got planned then?" "Well, there's this travelling carnival in town, so I thought we could..." Kevin's words were interrupted as Colette skipped down the stairs. "Hey," she said. Her smile filled her face, flashing her perfect white teeth. Kevin's pacing stopped. He stared at her in awe. She wore tight jeans and a yellow vest top that hugged her perfect figure. Kevin had to stop himself from staring as he quickly became aware that both Colette and her father were watching him. "You okay?" Colette asked. "Yeah, you look amazing." He almost went to give her a kiss, but he quickly decided against it. If the nerves hadn't halted him already, the stare of Colette's father would have. "So, you ready to go?" She took his hand. "Yeah, let's go. See you later, Steve." Kevin waved. "See you two later. Be good." "Bye, Dad." The two walked out into the sunshine. The house had felt relatively cool, but now, outside, the sun beamed down, smothering their bodies with warmth. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" Colette said. "It really is. A perfect day for the carnival." Kevin grabbed her hand. She smiled. "Yeah, it is." Then she started running along the street, keeping hold of Kevin's hand and forcing him to run along with her. This is what he loved about her. She was so different from all the other girls he knew. At 16, most girls were more concerned about how they looked, and they'd sit at home all day taking pictures of themselves to post on Instagram. They certainly wouldn't be caught dead running down the street. Colette wasn't like that. She was beautiful, and she must have known she was beautiful. It was common knowledge that she was the prettiest girl in school, but that didn't matter to her. She didn't cover herself in makeup. She didn't take non-stop selfies and search for online approval from people for filtered photos uploaded night and day. She did use social media, but mainly to chat to friends and stuff like that. It hadn't consumed her as the vanity tool that had taken over so many kids today. Kevin laughed and ran as fast as he could to keep up with her. He was by no means unfit, but it was still a struggle to keep pace with Colette. With her being practically perfect in every way, without the umbrella, she was also the school's athletics star. That was on top of being brilliantly intelligent. There wasn't much that she couldn't do, really. It still baffled Kevin that she even had the time of day for him. She could have anyone and do anything she wanted. But she chose him, her childhood friend. Together they shared a bond stronger than anyone else they knew. Truth be told, they were so close growing up that they'd been confused as brother and sister quite a few times, especially at school. There would no doubt be a few turned heads when they turn up after the summer holidays as boyfriend and girlfriend. Okay, slow down, Kevin panted. You need to work on your fitness, buddy, Colette laughed. Hey, not everyone's a star athlete, you know. Well, you gotta keep up. She took both his hands in hers. Kevin wanted to lean in for a kiss. The moment felt right. He was also out of breath and didn't want to start coughing and spluttering in her mouth. With his stomach bubbling with nerves, he leaned forward and kissed her on the cheek. Colette smiled at him. Her eyes smiled as well. They seemed to sparkle with the reflection of the sun. Come on, we're nearly there. She held his hand and they both walked slowly for the rest of the way. Kevin subtly took deep breaths when he could, to catch his breath without letting Colette notice. They turned the corner to the old school field where the carnival had set up. The field had been unused for a few years now. The old school building stood tall, watching over it. Its blackened face had been untouched since it went up in flames. Firemen worked hard to put the blaze out, but after the smouldering and smoking had stopped, the place was left untouched. It was on the far side of town and had been derelict for years before the fire. Since the new school building had been built closer to the town centre, there was no need for this old place anymore. Locals had hoped some developers would snatch the land up and build a retail park or something on there, but it had never happened. No one was interested in this place. Police and fire marshals ruled that the fire was the result of vandals, but no one was ever caught. Thankfully, no one was hurt either. After that, no one seemed to think about the place. Until now. A large Ferris wheel stood tall, its silhouette backing against the charred building. It gave for a rather haunting but very effective visual. Kevin always thought that carnivals were a little bit creepy, and this image seemed to really show that. One sec, I've got to get a pic of this, he said. Oh, I thought we said no phones today, Colette moaned. I'm not going to be on my phone, honestly, I just want a pic of the wheel. Okay, hurry up. She walked ahead while he took his picture. A couple of seconds later, he'd caught up to Colette. He was expecting to walk under a huge sign or archway that said Funland or World-Famous Travelling Carnival or something like that, but they didn't. They just walked onto the field and the carnival was set up. There was no entrance as such at all. Music filled the field. It was horrible 80s disco music, or that's what Kevin thought it was anyway, the sort of stuff that his parents listened to. He tried to ignore it, which was difficult due to the huge speakers that were placed around the field. The first thing they came to was one of those hooker duck stalls. Kevin looked at Colette for a brief second before she dismissed him with a quick, "No." He laughed and pretended he was joking, then took her hand again. "So, what do you want to go on first?" he asked. "How about the Ferris wheel?" They looked up to the huge looming circle in the sky. This filled Kevin with fear. He didn't mind roller coasters or any other rides, but he dreaded the thought of the Ferris wheel, just dangling there from so high and for so long. Other rides move fast and it's over before you know it. It's just a pure adrenaline rush. But the slow unsteadiness of the Ferris wheel was torture, and those chair things rocked back and forth while up there. His stomach knotted. He really did not want to go on that thing. Certainly not for the very first ride, but he couldn't start off the day by showing Colette that he was a wimp. He hesitated. "Come on, look at that thing," Colette said. "It's huge." Yeah, it is," Kevin muttered and frantically looked for an escape. "Hey, look at that place." "What?" "That over there," he pointed. "House of Illusion. Let's go and try that out." The attraction looked like one of your typical fairground haunted houses. Its build was rectangular in shape and it wasn't particularly tall. There was a single cart track which ran across the entrance, with a skeleton stood at the doorway. The skeleton wore a purple wizard's robe and hat. The hat had gold, shining stars patterned on it. Running across the top of the build was a blue, sparkling sign, House of Illusion. The man who stood outside the building, who also wore a wizard's robe, suddenly turned his gaze to Kevin and Colette. It was as if he knew they were looking at his ride. He flashed them a smile and then gestured for them to come closer with his finger. "Come and play in a land of confusion. You cannot escape the House of Illusion," he bellowed. Kevin and Colette looked at each other and laughed. "Well, that was a bit cheesy, wasn't it?" Colette giggled. "Yeah," Kevin replied, "but it might be fun. Come on, let's check it out." The pair approached the ride. The man flashed them his smile again. He bowed and lifted his hat. "Hello, sir and madam, and how are you on this beautiful day?" he asked in his deep voice. "We're good, thanks." Kevin gave a narrow smile. "Are you prepared to be astonished and amazed?" the man asked. "Sure," Kevin smiled again. "And are you prepared to be shocked and confused?" Okay. "Well, take no more time. Please enter, enter." The man held out his palm. Kevin saw the sign that said, "Entry, £5." He took a 10 out of his wallet and placed it in the man's hand. "A grand gesture, sir, but I do not wish for your money. I would like to take your hand so I can take you beyond the realms of our reality. Beyond comprehension, beyond." He paused and looked around the area. "This place." "Okay," Colette smiled and took the man's hand. "He really gets into his role, doesn't he?" she whispered to Kevin. "Remember, this is the land of illusion. What you see is not as it appears. Trust nothing." The man took Colette's hand and led her toward the cart. He helped her into the seat, and she shimmied along. "Sir?" He gestured for Kevin to join her. There was no bar in the cart, which didn't really surprise them. These rides always moved so slowly that there wasn't really any need for them. Plus, it looked so old that it had probably been around long before all the health and safety regulation from today's standards. To add emphasis to the age of the cart, they quickly realized that there were no mechanics to move them along. The man walked behind the cart and placed his hands on the back. Slowly, he began to push. "Time to enter a land of confusion. Good luck in surviving the House of Illusion." The cart gradually picked up pace. He pushed them through a purple satin curtain. Then suddenly, they came to a complete stop. The pair sat in the darkness for a moment. Nothing happened. "Hey, what's going on?" Kevin turned around, but the man was gone. They could see the light from outside shining through the parting in the curtains, but the man was nowhere to be seen. "Oh, this stupid thing's broken," Colette moaned. "I knew this would be rubbish. We should have gone on the wheel first, like I said. Come on, we'll go and find out what's going on." Kevin climbed out of the cart and helped Colette out. The pair walked toward the strip of light in the curtain. "Hello," Kevin called. "Hey, your ride isn't working." They opened the curtains and walked back to the entrance of the ride. Their jaws dropped as they looked around. The entrance to the ride was there, but no sign of the man or anyone else at all. Nowhere around the whole carnival, and the sky was black. They could see the glimmer of stars in the blanket of night. "What the hell?" Colette said. "What time is it?" Kevin asked. "I dunno. We left my house at what, 10 a.m? We've only been out for half an hour. It can't be night time." "Maybe an eclipse or something." "You hear of any eclipse coming? It'd be big news, wouldn't it? And where is everyone? This place was packed before." "I dunno. Are we dreaming? Or drugged or something? Did that guy do something to us?" "I dunno, Kevin. I don't like this. I'm scared." Colette began to cry. Laughter came from behind the curtain. The pair jumped with fright. Colette screamed. Kevin grabbed her and pulled her behind him. For a brief moment, he felt proud of himself for being so brave and protecting his girlfriend. A very brief moment. Now fear settled in, and the laughter caused his knees to shake. "Hello?" Colette called. "Shh!" Kevin turned to her. "What are you doing?" "Well, they may be able to help us." Yeah, okay." Kevin slowly approached the curtain, keeping his arm back in a gesture to tell Colette to stay there. Before he could reach the curtain, a face popped through the opening. It had bright blue hair that stood on end, dark red lips that were stretched from ear to ear, eyes so black that they just looked like holes in the middle of the face. The rest of the laughing clown hadn't come through the curtain yet. It was still just a face. "Hi, Kevin stuttered. "Could you help us, please?" The clown responded with laughter, a laugh that made Kevin's bones rattle with fear. The laughter got louder, and the clown's mouth opened wider and wider. A moment later, Kevin was able to see that the extremely elongated mouth hadn't been painted on. It was the clown's actual mouth. The bottom half of its face seemed to unhinge, and the top half tilted back. The laughter grew louder and bellowed around the dark carnival. Suddenly the head snapped shut and the clown walked through the curtain. It wore a green and blue all-in-one suit, the colours split down the middle. In its hand was a sledgehammer. A smile returned to the face, flashing razor-sharp teeth that glistened in the moonlight like some kind of metal. Kevin was frozen in fear, stuck to the spot. He tried to turn and run away, but his legs wouldn't work. It was like the ground had gotten hold of him and refused to let go. A hand gripped his shoulder and pulled him backwards. Almost falling over, he somehow managed to turn himself around where he saw Colette reaching for his hand. "Come on!" she screamed. "Huh?" Kevin, still in shock, turned to look behind him to the monstrous sight. "Run!" Colette grabbed his hand and began to sprint away from the clown. Kevin went with her, finally snapping back into himself. What the hell was that?" he panted. "I don't know. Just keep running. Where are we going?" "We're going to get out of here." Colette kept hold of Kevin's hand and ran towards the edge of the field. The darkness seemed to be lowering from the sky and started to swallow them like a blanket. They ran past a hooker duck stall. In this light, it appeared to be a greyish-blue colour, like it had aged, and all the colour had run out of it. They continued to run until they hit a black wall. The impact knocked the wind out of the pair of them, and they fell to the ground. "What in the hell?" Colette rose to her feet. She walked forward with her hand held out. The edge of the field was gone. The exit from the carnival was gone. All that remained was a huge wall of darkness. When she reached it, she pressed her hand against the blackness. It was smooth, like a mirror. But there was no glimmer, no pattern, nothing at all. Just black. "Kevin, what the hell is going on?" She began to cry again. "Colette!" Kevin called, the fear in his eyes causing Colette to turn around and see what he was looking at. Above her, coming from the smooth, black abyss, hundreds of hands reached through the darkness. They were crawling along on their fingertips, slowly edging towards her. "Colette, get your hand off there!" She removed her hand from the smooth surface and stumbled backward. As though they'd pushed an off switch, the hand slowly receded back into the darkness. The fingertips were last to be seen as they disappeared through the black hole, and then Kevin and Colette were left facing nothing again, a large, looming nothing that seemed to cover the whole carnival like a dome. Behind them, they could hear that laughter approached again, accompanied by the thud of oversized shoes. The pair turned around and saw the shadow of the clown approaching in the moonlight. They ran from the black wall and towards the nearest structure they could see. "Come on, in here!" Kevin hurried. Colette followed him into the house of mirrors. Kevin almost screamed when he ran through the door and came face to face with his reflection. He hadn't noticed the name of the attraction he'd run into and wasn't expecting mirrors at all. Colette ran into the back of him, forcing him to fall forward into the mirror. He smashed his nose against the surface, and blood exploded all over his reflection. He wanted to cry out in pain, but knew he couldn't because the clown with the sledgehammer would find them. He covered his nose with his hands, and the crimson liquid seeped through his fingers. "We have to move!" Colette grabbed his hand, ignoring the wet, sticky substance. "Come on!" They crept along, moving through the hallway of mirrors, focusing on nothing but moving forwards and trying to make as little sound as possible. Neither of them noticed the mirror images of themselves were not copying their movements. The images in the mirror stood side by side, their facial expressions blank, then slowly turned to follow the pair. Do you think he saw us come in?" Kevin whispered. "I don't know, but if he peeked, he's going to see the blood on that mirror. We may as well have drawn a sign on the door for him." "It's not my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault." Colette shut him up. "We don't have time to bicker. We have to keep moving." They continued their slow crawl along the hallway until they hit a wall. Colette stopped and stood face to face with the mirror. "Oh, we must have missed a turn-off somewhere," she moaned. Then something caught her eye. Face to face with her reflection, she saw it was not showing a face of concern or disappointment as she felt. It wore a smile. "Kevin?" she whispered. Her reflection didn't whisper with her. It held its sinister smile. As Kevin approached from behind, his reflection joined hers. It too was giving that terrifying grin. Suddenly, laughter filled the halls, a chorus of boys' and girls' laughter. It surrounded them, coming from every angle. Kevin and Colette crouched to the floor and embraced each other in a hug of fear, surrounded by the reflections that looked down on them and laughed. The laughing mouths grew wider until the top half of the heads unhinged, just as the clowns had earlier. When they snapped back into place, the metallic teeth appeared. "Run!" Kevin screamed. The pair scurried back along the corridor. When Kevin placed his hand on one of the mirrors to keep his balance, another hand shot out of the glass wall and tried to grab him. He screamed again. "Don't touch the mirrors! Keep your hands to yourself, or just keep hold of mine!" Colette's hand found his, and she gripped it so tight that he could feel his knuckles grinding together. It didn't hurt. He was too scared to feel pain. He kept running around in circles and back and forth through the hall of mirrors. Eventually they saw a red curtain with the word "exit" above it. The laughter was getting louder and rushing up behind them. Colette looked over her shoulder to see that she and Kevin were now chasing them. Those razor-like teeth shone bright as they got closer to them. Oh my God, they're out of the mirror!" she cried. "What?" Kevin looked over his shoulder. The sight of his own face pursuing him filled him with dread. They dived through the red curtain and landed on the damp grass outside. They both sat in terror, waiting for the moment that their doppelgangers would jump through that curtain and devour them with those terrifying teeth. But it didn't happen. Nothing came. "I have no idea what's going on here, Kevin. But I really want to go home now." Me too. Did we get drugged or something? How can any of this be real?" The conversation was interrupted by a high-pitched laugh that came from behind them. They looked up to see the blue hair of the clown dangling over them. A laughing scream pierced their ears as the sledgehammer came slamming down. They rolled out of the way just in time. "You're going to suffer multiple contusions, and you can't escape the house of illusion." The clown giggled. Kevin and Colette got to their feet and ran away from the menace once again. "Don't run! Join in We'll have no exclusion. You're staying forever in the House of Illusion, he shouted behind them, his sinister giggle still accompanying his words. There, Colette pointed, the Ferris wheel. Kevin came to a halt. His fear came rushing back to him. What are you doing? Colette screamed. He stuttered. I can't do it. I'm scared of them. More scared than you are of that. Colette pointed to the quickly approaching clown. Left with no choice, Kevin joined Colette and they ran to the Ferris wheel. It was already moving, but very slowly. They climbed into one of the carriages as it passed by. Kevin almost stopped again, but the thought of that clown and its teeth forced him onto the ride. They both sat on the bench in the carriage and gave a deep sigh of relief. The clown reached the Ferris wheel and just stood, staring at them as they slowly began to rise into the air. Colette, Kevin said. What? What are we going to do when this thing goes back down? She hadn't thought of that. In her head, they were going to climb onto the Ferris wheel and they would stop when at the top. Quite what they would do from there hadn't really entered her mind. She just wanted to put as much distance between them and the clown as possible. Oh, She couldn't think of a response. It didn't matter anyway. As they neared the top of the cycle, the structure began to shake violently. When they looked down, they saw 4 clowns. All of them looked identical. The same blue hair, the same green and blue suit. They all had sledgehammers. In perfect time with one another, their hammers began to smash against the supporting beams of the attraction. The carriages began to sway from side to side. From behind them, Kevin heard laughter. He turned around to see the doubles of him and Colette climbing from one carriage to another. They were getting closer to them. The hammering continued as well, all of the carriages swaying more and more from side to side. The doppelgangers didn't seem to be fazed by it as they easily moved from one to the next. The young couple held each other. Tears pooled in Kevin's eyes as he embraced the love of his life, waiting for the moment that the carriage unhinged and they fell to their deaths. I love you, Colette. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. Then he kissed her. Their lips pressed together and their hold got tighter. They heard the snap. The carriage began to fall. Neither of them opened their eyes. They didn't want to see it. They just held that kiss and waited for the end. The cart rolled through the curtain. Sunlight shined on Kevin and Colette's faces. They opened their eyes and saw the wizard from the beginning of the ride. "Did you guys have fun?" he asked. The pair just stared at him in disbelief. "Are you okay?" The man spoke again. Yeah, we're fine." Kevin climbed out of the cart and then helped Colette. They walked away from the ride, staring up at the clear blue sky. The shine of the sun hurt their eyes, but it felt good. It was better than the darkness. That was the most trippy thing I've ever experienced. Kevin laughed. How did they even do that? Virtual reality or something? It felt so real. Colette didn't respond. Kevin turned to her and grabbed her by the waist. He pulled her close and gave her a gentle kiss on the lips. Then he wrapped his arms around her and hugged her tight, so tight that he never wanted to let her go. She mumbled something into his shoulder. "What did you say?" he asked, and loosened the hug so she could speak properly. "You got out of the ride, but took the wrong one of the twosome. You cannot escape our house of illusion." What? Kevin's heart raced. Colette's laugh filled the carnival. The top half of her head unhinged and flashed sharp metallic teeth. She lunged at Kevin. His scream was stopped before it even left his mouth. The end.